We have big news from the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. Not only have they decided on a general manager, but they've also hired a president of hockey operations. We'll get into their selections coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some pretty significant breaking news from the Penguins organization. We know they've been looking for a new GM since Jim Rutherford abruptly resigned a short time ago, and now they found their next GM as well as a president of hockey operations. So they've hired former Flyer player and GM, so a big rival, for at least former rival of theirs, Ron Hextall, to be the team's next general manager, and they've also hired Brian Burke to be the next president of hockey operations. Now, the Brian Burke hiring is certainly even more surprising, I must say. Of course, he's been out of the executive world for a little bit, working for the media. He's been an on-air personality for Sportsnet for the last couple of seasons, so I certainly wasn't aware that he was looking to make the move back into the NHL as an executive at all. I know his Sportsnet colleagues are all online wishing him the best and certainly said how great he was to work with. So I know Burke can sometimes come off as a little bit rough around the edges, I guess we can say. But I know Ellie Friedman, Chris Johnson, Ron McLean, all those guys that work with him at Sportsnet certainly all had nothing but great things to say and are all going to miss working with him. So, of course, he's a very experienced hockey man, goes way back working for, Team USA. Of course, Brian Burke's got a long history working for the Hartford Whalers, the Anaheim Ducks, where he got a Stanley Cup. Of course, he was a stint in the big market of Toronto, the Maple Leafs GM, which was certainly, obviously the market in Toronto was very different. It was certainly, in the media all the time. Obviously was there for a while. And then most recently was a president of hockey operations for the Calgary Flames before transitioning into a media role with Sportsnet over the past couple of years. Brian Burke's a guy who's, well experienced. So obviously the Penguins, I think, made a pretty good choice bringing him into the fold. I think he can certainly offer them something. It's kind of funny too, having Burke go to the Penguins. Of course, Brian Burke was often critical of the Penguins way back when Crosby was first drafted. Not necessarily critical of the Penguins themselves, but of the process. I know many people talked about, rebuilding and looking at the Penguins, and he often talked about how lucky they were because they won the lottery to draft Sidney Crosby. He's already made comments publicly saying, well, now I've got Sidney Crosby on the same team here. So I know he's happy to have some elite company to work with. Safe to say they definitely won't be going down the road of a rebuild. I know I've heard a lot of comments from Burke on Sportsnet about the Penguins and many other teams, and I really don't see a rebuild being for a while. I think they will continue to try to tweak this team to certainly make moves to go forward. So Burke's back in the fold, and of course, as I mentioned, Ron Hextall, a well-respected guy in the hockey world as well. Certainly somebody who was a rival to the Penguins for a long time as a Flyers goaltender, and then of course as a Flyers GM for a while. Of course, he previously had worked with the LA Kings for a good stretch as an assistant GM. A very well-respected, smart hockey man. Obviously looking to get back into the mix here. He's been in the fold for other GM jobs here in the last little while since he's been away from the Flyers, so this is certainly a good landing spot for him. Of course, Ron Hextall does have connections to Pittsburgh itself as well. Of course, as a child, as a father, Brian was with the Penguins organization for 5 years, and he lived in Pittsburgh, I believe, until age 10, I think it was. So, he's certainly quite familiar with the area, and I think the Pittsburgh Penguins have certainly brought in, two well-experienced hockey guys. One thing, too, with Hextall, I thought that the drafting in the Flyers organization was absolutely tremendous during his stint there, and I know that when he was let go, I think a lot of it was to do with to a degree, the inconsistency of the team and a difference in philosophy. I know he's the kind of guy who seems to really like to not rush the prospects and let them gain experience in the American Hockey League and kind of work their way up, earn their spots. And I know the Flyers seem to be wanting to put a little more pressure on getting some guys, especially Carter Hart, up into the lineup on a full-time basis. So there seemed to be some disagreements that way between Ron Hextall and guys like Paul Holmgren at the time. So we'll see how they do in Pittsburgh. I have no doubt that they will do a good job to restock the prospect cupboards because the Penguins are pretty bare in that regard. They're going to have to balance out continuing to be competitive today with their stars to try to see if they can compete for a Stanley Cup while at the same time getting that next crop of players ready to come in and kind of take over the reins here over the next few years as they slowly transition away from today's stars into tomorrow's stars. So we will see what they do. So obviously, in this case, Hextall will be the GM. He will report into Brian Burke as the president of hockey operations, and then Brian Burke will report into David Morehouse from there. So obviously, it's a big day in Pittsburgh. They have their new hires in place. I'd love to know what everybody thinks. It's certainly going to be interesting to see once they get started what kind of moves they make and how they take this team forward. For right now, I'm going to say they get themselves a couple of good guys, and I hope that they do well and can help take this Pittsburgh team to balance out today and tomorrow to see how competitive they can remain while they transition to the next group of tomorrow's future stars. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.